Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good day, good morning, depending on which coast you're on. We're Endeavour Solutions and our GP Support North team. And today's webinar is on end of life for GP. Is it safe to stay on Dynamics GP? My name is Scott Jorgens, Director of Marketing here. And on the line, we also have Marvin Burnett, Director of our ERP practice. And let me get into our agenda. And we'll be going through today's presentation. We got lots to cover and some, fun screens and things to share and talk about. We'll also finish up with a Q&A to have additional discussions. First off, I'll give you an update on the Dynamics GP roadmap and some of the facts for end of life, and then why we're here. This is options. Is it safe to stay? Is it safe to move to Business Central, and what to look at? Really, it's going to be on a client-by-client basis, and we're going to provide you some of the details to help you make an informed decision. At Endeavour, we do love Dynamics GP. We have over 500 clients and expect to have many for a number of years to come, and are dedicated to building, expanding, and strengthening our GP support team for those that aren't quite ready to move and those that are looking to stay long term. As well, we are actively moving clients to Business Central for those that want to adapt to the cloud early, middle, or late. We'll look at some of the risk factors and continue on from there. So, Dynamics GP, the roadmap has basically been extended from 2028 to 2029. So we got one extra year. And then there's this extended security. And so they're providing extended security till 2031. The official phrasing for extended security is if there's something that's considered a security concern, then there may be an update or release pack for Dynamics GP up until April of 2031. That's still 5 years out or over 5 years out. So there could be changes in Microsoft's announcement, some of their posturing. Right now, the end of life is set for September 2029. And that means that it's 5 years from when they announced it, which was September 2024 of this year. That also means that there won't be a year-end update for 2029. So, options for GP clients. Primary option recommendation is move to Business Central. Yes, there are other ERPs, but Business Central is the most closely aligned. It's within the Microsoft stack, has fantastic functions, works with all of your Office 365, Microsoft 365, with Teams, with Power BI, and with many of the ISVs that you may be using today for GP, if those same functions are used for Business Central. So how do you get there? 3 steps, really. First one is planning. Endeavour has a number of free assessments. All of those that are on the line today have been receiving our monthly Dynamics GP newsletter, have seen these offers for these assessments. Microsoft is giving us funding, and we can come in, look at your current costs, your current systems, the value and benefit of moving to Business Central. If you are staying on GP, it's still worth doing the assessment, because that gives you an estimation and numbers and approach of if you change your mind in the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years, here's at least a ballpark. Prices may change, complexities may change, processes may change between now and 10 years from now, but at least you can go through that approach. So we do recommend you take that first step of doing the free assessment if you're staying or if you're going. If you are committed to moving to Business Central, then we get into a deeper dive discussions, refine the estimates to a more defined quote, something that becomes signature worthy, and then really comes down to a migration. When do you want to move? Is it this quarter, next quarter, a year, and 2 quarters away? And pick a date, set those plans internally with your team, do some of the change management and preempting, and work with some of the things we're going to talk about today in terms of data cleanup, data transformation, and be able to get the most out of your Dynamics GP until you're looking to move, and then being ready to move those over to Business Central. As well, we're here to talk about, is it safe to stay on GP? And for many clients, the answer will be yes. We're going to look at the life between now and September 2029. That's easy, really not a lot of change. Life after September 2029 will see some changes, but still we believe it's going to be safe to keep paying your annual enhancement, keep receiving the software updates from Microsoft and security up until 2029. After that, there may not be additional updates from Microsoft, but you still have a support partner within Endeavour and our GP Support North team. And we just released September of this year a new unlimited break fix support plan. And I'll talk about that momentarily. Before I talk about the GP support plan, I did want to share that we have 2 white papers. We actually have 3. So there's 3 white papers we have on our website. These are 2 of them. Top 6 tips for digital transformation while staying on Dynamics GP. And basically a very similar white paper, top 7 tips for digital transformation while using Business Central. The key is you can do business transformation with whatever ERP you have. And a lot of the fundamentals are the same. You can see the links here for the 6 tips on GP Support North, encouraging you to stay and fix your systems. And then on EndeavourSolutions.com, 7 tips, encouraging you to get more. And the 7 tips is something we're actually sharing with all the clients that have already migrated to Business Central over the last 3 or 4 years. Top 4 things within the digital transformation. Number 1, review your business processes. Can you automate more? Can you automate finance? Can you help automate other lines of business? Number 3 was business metrics. Everyone's been talking for years and years about better reporting, better analytics, better decision making based on data. Power BI came out well over 5 years ago. Very few of our Dynamics GP clients are using Power BI. There are a few that have taken those steps forward, and we really encourage you to start looking at that now, because with the Business Central, Power BI is embedded for free within Business Central. And some other clients are still using Power BI as part of a data mart and expanding and pulling in and aggregating information from even other systems, really helping your users make better decisions by curating content for them that tells a story. If you have a trend graph, what is good, better, best? Are there dials that change color from green is good and red is bad? How can you set different KPIs, key performance indicators, OKRs, objectives and key results for your organization, have different teams roll together? These are all transformational, fundamental business changes. Your ERP can support you, and Power BI and other tools can support you. Now is the time to transform. So either transform as part of your migration to Business Central or transform now, because you don't want to be automating and migrating archaic business processes. Now is the time to look at that. So life between now and 2029. So this is before end of life. As I mentioned, we got 2 columns. If you're moving to the cloud, it's that budgeting, the planning. How are you going to work with our team? How are you going to purchase Business Central? There are special incentives through Endeavour and Microsoft in terms of discounts for those that are active and current on their enhancements. You're paying your annual fees to Microsoft. There's some deep discounts for moving to Business Central, and that gets sort of a 3-year discount. There's other options that we can work with. Basically, you got to talk to our team, Johnny, James, Steve, as well as Trish. We got Jerry and we got Paul, plus our support desk, plus your favorite consultants. Even Marvin and myself are happy to answer some questions, receive your call, and point you in the right direction. Process optimization. You notice they're the same bullets if you're staying on GP or moving to the cloud. Is there an opportunity to optimize your chart of accounts? Optimize your reporting. Look at AP automation, OCR scanning, invoice scanning, PO requisitions, self-serve portals, expense management automation, all these pieces together. Really, what is your procure to pay? What is your order to cash? And those are things that we can talk to. You know what, Marvin? Can I have you jump in here and talk about, because you're involved with much of the consultants that are doing some of the estimates, the lift and shift methodology versus transformation at the same time methodology versus doing it wrong and it's costing a whole lot of money because you're creating too much complexity.
So you're talking about the move from
Like,
GP to BC, or
correct, correct.
okay?
GP to BC, and just sort of anchoring with some changes can be done now.
Yeah. So one of the things that a lot of people, when they're looking at it, they take an opportunity to, let's say, do some cleanup and look at the structure of the way things are. So, for example, on the chart of accounts, if you're working inside GP, we have a number of organizations that we worked with that, they've had the same chart of accounts for the last 10, 15, 20 years, and they've, maybe they've ran out of space. Like I saw one a few years back in the fixed assets section where they ran out of space in the section that they had allocated for fixed assets, so they added some elsewhere, and they, weren't able to move things around. Well, inside GP on it, like inside GP, you have the ability, and I'm just going to share my screen if that's okay, Scott, for a
That'd be
second.
great. We're right on
Okay,
time.
so let me just pop open my screen here. I'm just going to share my screen out. So if I'm staying on GP, or if I'm looking to do some cleanup, you'll see here I've got GP open. There's something called professional service tools. So everybody that has GP owns professional service tools. A lot of people don't actually realize that they own it. It's I'm going to say a large tool set that allows you to manage and transform master records. So we're talking about the vein of the chart of accounts for a second, and you can see inside professional service tools, we have the account changer and modifier. When we start talking about account changer and modifier, I'll use that example of the fixed assets. Well, a GL account got stuck here, but I really need it here, or I need to move some GL accounts around and make space to move other ones that should be logically grouped together. When I click on the account modifier changer here, you're going to see I have the ability to either pick an account, or I can do a range of accounts, or I can even import a list. The import is extremely easy. Left column is old number, right column is new number. This could be customers, vendors, items, inventory items, GL accounts. I'm talking about GL accounts here. So, and easily enough, I can just pick an account. So let's say petty cash. I think where is it, petty cash or something like that. This savings account 1140. Well, maybe I want it to be 1100 or something like that, or 1112. I could easily pick up this and just say 000, oops, 111200, and then just hit convert. It's going to move all the work open in history and move it over to the new account number. So now I've actually had the chance to move it. The other thing that if we're talking about, so this is staying on GP and I need to clean it up, but if we're talking about moving to BC, and we'll get into this a little bit more as we talk or as we go through today, but there's an opportunity in BC because BC's account framework is different than GP, is probably the easiest way of saying it. But on a simplified basis, everybody knows here, I'm just going to cancel this. I don't have to convert that one. But when I look at my chart of accounts, so I'm going to go into here, I'm going to do a lookup on my chart of accounts on my cards, and I'm going to get this list of my GL accounts. So these are all posting accounts. Well, if I switch over to BC for a second, so let me just pop into, I got the slide deck over here. Let me pop over to Business Central. So when I get into Business Central here, under my chart of accounts, the framework is actually different. So it's listing my main GL account as we talked about it from the GP's perspective, but I have the ability to have posting and totaling accounts. I have to have posting accounts, Scott. Without posting accounts, you can't post.
Got
But I
it.
am able to have totaling accounts here, and think of it like a logical report grouping. I have a header and I have a footer. If Scott were to ask me, hey, Marvin, what's the balance sitting in our bank account? Logically, I'd probably say none of your business, Scott. But let's say Scott was allowed to know. I could do a couple things. I could add up these accounts, or because I have the ability to have a totaling account, it gives me the ability to set a row here that says just add up 1100 to 11700. So I can just have these accounts added together, and I can see that, well, you know what, my balance is $15 million. So it's an easy way of pulling it in. I can even add some shortcuts here. So if I wanted to look at what my salaries and wages were, I have the ability to have my salaries and wages as a quick shortcut here, and it adds them together. So that would be one of the things. And if you are thinking about moving it over, let's put it back into perspective. GP has posting accounts. Most people started bank at 10,000 or 1,000 or whatever it was. But if I want to allocate some room here and say assets are 1,000 because it's a begin total and I have total assets down, current assets and cash and equivalent, maybe I want to start setting up some room for that. So I have like a logical grouping that says numerically everything in my 11s go from 11,100 to 11,700. I can even do little things like that. If I wanted this to be 11,101, 11,101, just hit save there or tab here. If I have permissions, it's going to go through and update all the records, so the posted, unposted records here, just like I was doing on my professional service tools in GP. So great time to start thinking about it. So whether you're staying, there's opportunities to clean up like you mentioned. And if you are moving and you want to start taking a look at, oh, hey, chart of accounts is different. Maybe I want to clean it up so I can take advantage of this. You could either clean it up in GP or clean it up once you get over to BC.
Marvin, do you want to talk about reporting dimensions now, or do you want to wait till we get to the reporting section?
You know what? We're on it right now. It probably makes sense to touch on it.
Go for it.
Inside GP, so I'm going to make a little bit of a comparison here, okay? Inside GP, I've got a test company here. It's got a 3-segment chart of accounts. So I can take a look at the configuration. So tools, setup, company, right? Oh, sorry, tools, setup, financial, and then tools, account format. Oh my gosh, sorry. Tools, setup, company, account format. And when I look here, I've got a division, an account, and a department. So each one of those becomes a segment in GP. You squeeze them together, you get a GL account. What that means is if I needed to add another department, and I've got 100 GL accounts, like 100 core accounts, and I add one more department, and it's applicable to every one of those, I get another 100 GL accounts. If I add a second one, I got 200. If I add 10, I get another 1,000 GL accounts. So often what I've heard from people on the GP side is like, my chart of accounts has exploded. It's gotten really big because we got all kinds of departments and stuff like that. Well, that's the nature of a multi-segment chart of accounts. BC is actually different. It uses a dimensional-based structure. So what you have is that core account. So think of account here as that core account, and then each one of these attributes. So an attribute to a transaction would be what division did this belong to? An attribute to a transaction would be what department did this belong to? Maybe you're managing councils, maybe you're managing departments or projects or whatever it is, product groups and stuff like that. Well, those are all dimensions inside Business Central. Now I can use, hopefully you've noticed Business Central looks a little bit different than GP for the look and feel. I'm just going to do a quick search on dimensions here. Okay, so you're going to see that there's 11 pages and tasks that are assigned to dimensions. I can go show all, but based on my previous search, dimensions is one of the most common ones I pick up. So I'm just going to click on this dimension. I can also add shortcuts onto the navigation pane and stuff like that. So you're seeing here, think of every additional segment in the chart of accounts as a dimension. Well, maybe I have councils or departments or projects or whatever it is that's important to my business that I'm tracking. This is the reasons why you set up these extra segments in the chart of accounts. Well, if I have departments here, if I go under dimensional values, you'll see here maybe it's admin, BD, field, IT, maintenance, blah, 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 all these different things. I have the ability to do alphanumeric. So if I like names, I can do names. If I like numbers, I can do numbers. I think Jeff, one of the guys I work with here, set this up because I love numbers. Jeff loves names, so he set these up with names. But you can do little things like this where you set these up. If I needed to add another department, so let's say Scott is a department all on his own.
Woohoo.
All of a sudden, I can just create Scott as a department value. I didn't have to create 100 new GL accounts. This as a department is now available. If I go over to a general ledger entry, so I'm just going to go, I'm just going to say add that in. And when I go general ledger here, so if I just go into general ledger entries, so general ledger, and I'm just going to show all 6. So general ledger entries, GL budgets, and general journal. General journal. So when I go general journal here, so this is like a GL entry. You're going to see here I have department code finance. I just added Scott. Scott's available in the list. Did not have to add another 1,000 GL accounts. I didn't have to go through a routine to create a whole bunch of GL accounts. It's just there. So that's, fundamentally one of the big changes on the chart of account side, that multi-segment versus dimensions. The second thing people always ask, Scott, is, okay, that's great that I have this core account. Okay, so I've got these core accounts. That's fantastic. I need to see it by my departments, though. Like, visualize this by the departments, because I used to run a report that had these accounts in sequence. Well, because they're separate pieces of information, if you think about them separately, and I'm putting them together on a transaction, whether it was a sales transaction, it doesn't have to be a GL entry, but a sales transaction, purchasing transaction, inventory, I can set them up as defaults. Maybe I want to take a look at my salaries and wages. When I look at my salaries and wages here, a quick visual is easy enough to just go balance, account by dimension. I have dimensional values here, so maybe I want to look at my departments, and maybe I want to look at, show me everything. So dot dot T. So a couple different things in the reporting when you start thinking about it. 62, this is the range value that I want to look at, and just simply show matrix. Well, now here's the amounts that are sitting overall, and here's the totals across the different departments that I have. So I still get those visuals. I still have the ability to slice and dice. It actually, as you start working with dimensions, you're going to start figuring out, it's like, it is really easy to slice and dice with those. But to go back to your question earlier, Scott, start thinking about, even if you're staying on GP, that cleanup and that segmentation and stuff like that. But if you're moving to BC, start thinking about, these are some of the opportunities that I have with it. What other things do I want to track? Maybe right now in GP, I'm tracking department and division. Maybe I want to start tracking campaigns because I'm going to trade shows. Well, I can easily do that. Maybe salespeople, maybe everything else. Because it's a dimensional value, it can be an attribute attached to a transaction. So it's a lot more robust on that basis.
Great. Thanks, Marvin. I'm going to take over back on to sharing the presentation, and then we'll jump back in on your side. I was about to take another segue off into talk about reporting, but I think the time's going to be better now to continue on. Here we go. Boom. So we just talked about, moving to Business Central as well as staying on GP, and that there's many of the things you can do. Going down the bullets, right down at the bottom, we're really looking at change management and training and the timing if you're moving to the cloud. And if you're staying, some of the things to also consider is third-party hosting. Where is your Dynamics GP systems being hosted? If it's in-house, is your IT team okay with that, or do they want to outsource it to a third party? And Endeavour has some options that puts it up onto a private cloud. It's really just a third-party data center because GP is not cloud-based software. You're just hosting on a virtual machine and accessing it through your remote desktop. And then last point is just, think of some contingency plans. If the hosting has issues, if SQL Server has issues, if your Windows Server has issues, if there's compatibility issues, who do you know who to call? How quickly is Endeavour going to get back to you and be able to fix it? Have you done your backups? Are you able to recover your backups? Have you done some of those tests? As well as, even if you do change your mind and want to move to Business Central, again, I encourage you to each do that assessment through Endeavour to figure out what is the cost, what is the effort, what are some of the backup plans if you do move to Business Central. Security is one of the things I did want to talk about, and this is in actually that third white paper I was talking about, 10 proof points for moving from GP to Business Central. You can find it on our website. But the key here in talking about security, and this is linking back to my brief discussion around contingency plans and hosting, is the security realm. If you look at the middle column, when GP was created and the security pressures we had back in the 90s and early 2000s was really keep people out of the office. We're connected to a LAN network. We're plugged in to the jack. Many of us even had our password on a sticky note on the monitor. As long as keep people out of the office, everything is safe. Access was typically during working hours, and those that were, the malicious mischief people were, due down the basement somewhere just trying to have a little small virus that antivirus software can pick up fairly easily. If we transition to today, in modern day, GP is still alive today, but it wasn't created for the cloud. Business Central, although it had a history in Nav, was recreated for the cloud. It's in a large Microsoft global data center. There's 2 in Canada, 4 or 5 in the US, all connected together on a global basis. If you're in Canada, you can have the Canadian only version, which means the data is not allowed to leave the country. If you're in the US, you can have the same thing. Data is not allowed to leave the country, or you can allow additional global geo redundancy. You name it. There's two-factor authentication, bring your own device, anywhere, anytime access. But the real part that is of concern is the bottom two corners and the bottom right of the screen, the malware and the Trojan horses. There is increased amount of cyber attacks, ransomware, and stuff that may get in your system and sleep for 6 months before surprising you. And if it's sleeping for 6 months and you only have 5 months of backup data, then all of your backups have been potentially infected. So you'd really have to play with how are you doing proper backups, retaining data, what can you roll around, how can we keep people out of your system, whether it's GP or Business Central. With Business Central, there is a whole bunch of zero trust, advanced monitoring that's within the systems by default to make sure individuals, users, even people that may gain external access can't do anything, can't cause the same trouble. There is a whole uh, level of sophisticated organizations on a global basis that are trying to extract money and cause trouble, all for profiting their own enterprises. So you have to watch out for that. Any of those that are on the line that are publicly traded, obviously, stock manipulation, insider trading, secrets, other are potentially risk of attacks or even just phishing schemes to steal funds. Be careful, keep your security top of mind. So next on our slides, is it safe to, is it go? Let's look at some of the risk factors. Risk factors for staying on GP. Right now, there is no risk, nothing more than before the announcement. Nothing has changed in the last 2 months. We still recommend all of our GP clients upgrade every year or two to make sure you're maintaining compatibility and getting access to the latest features. The nice thing is, we're thinking back to the GP roadmap. As you do, right now we're on 18.7 is the most recent version. As you do any one of those small patches, it automatically updates you into the next version. Some clients skip 2 or 3, need to move it into test environments, production environments as larger upgrades. Some others are able to just go, we're just going to drop in this one little piece and in place upgrades. Again, you have to talk to your Endeavour consultants to figure out what is your risk appetite and what's best for your organization in terms of a GP upgrade approach. Midterm, as we get closer to 2029, so basically the next 4 or 5 years, there is a risk that some of the add-ons and ISVs are starting to lose skills, lose access to their talent. We're finding that some ISVs are choosing to say they are not going to support older versions. So anyone on GP 2016, you may be running into issues because 2016 is, oh goodness, 8-9 years old now. So they're going only on the modern life cycle or only in the last 2 or 3 releases. Some of the ISVs are starting to play those games. We are finding some are doing significant price increases, not 5-10% to keep up with inflation. We're seeing 100% increases, 50% increases. Some are basically seeing their client base dwindle and are making strategic decisions on their side on how they want to treat pricing and the loyal customers, those on the line. Infrastructure. So your infrastructure, when you first implemented GP, I've heard from Marvin, I've heard of others, at one point it was on a floppy disk. Then it was on, CD-ROMs. Then you're downloading. There was SQL Server 2002, which went out of support a number of years ago and had some risks related to it. The current SQL Server is coming out, basically came out this fall, going to be available for your next upgrade is SQL Server 2025 and Windows Server 2025. These typically have 3-year life cycles. So there's odds are everyone on the line today is on SQL Server 2022, before that was a 2019. 2019 was a very popular one, and then ones before that. You can't, you know, you can stay on SQL Server for a number of years and Windows Server for a number of years, but there are an increasing number of risks as those go off of security and go off of support from Microsoft. Last payroll update, as I mentioned, we were talking about the map. September 2029 is the end of the payroll updates. So really, your full year is going to be the end of 2028, which gets you through 2029. But for 2029, you're not going past that. You have those mid-year updates, so June 2028, and actually June 2029. I could change that now, but June 2029 will be the last mid-year update for payroll, for Canadian payroll and for US payroll as of now. Microsoft might change their mind. Endeavour does have third-party options. We have a Canadian payroll option that won't be free, but is an option, and they've committed to, as long as they have a significant number of clients and interest, that they'll take the cost and effort of doing the whole payroll, spread it across how many clients they have. It may be across 50, maybe across 20, maybe across 200, and be able to bring that to you. And their plans are, 2035. They said 2040, but that's too far out for anyone to fully plan on their software. Also, in the midterm, I think there will be fewer options in the market. Thank you for being our client. No need to look to see if the grass is green on the other side. We are the de facto best for Dynamics GP support across North America, and we're continuing to bring on new clients, probably a few each month, that are leaving their other partner, coming to GP Support North because of our commitment to staying on GP and supporting it. We're continuing to grow and strengthen our team. And thank you for your business. There will be capacity constraints as well. Given the number of clients we have and given the number of clients across GP, across North America, each migration is going to take a number of months. And if you do the math, there's just not enough hours, days, weeks, months, not enough years to move everyone in time. If you guys all decide in 2027 to move, we'll have to figure that out as we get closer to the date. Right now, we have excess capacity. We can move from GP to Business Central, and we're doing it for a variety of clients of ours, as well as new clients coming to Endeavour from other partners. Long term, and these are the risk factors. These are the things that are going to help you make your informed decisions. And again, do that in that assessment and analysis with Endeavour and get some of the facts and some of those details and some of the estimates. Long term, so after 2029, there will still be security patches till April 2031. So if you have specific policies to say thou shall not be on an unsupported system from the vendor, technically 2031, I think, is a good enough gray area to get you that far. You still need to be current on enhancement and paying your annual enhancement to get access to those security patches, as well as access to be able to add more users and other updates to your systems. There may be compatibility issues. We all dealt with the compatibility issue a few years ago with integration to Office 365 as they were changing some of their modern security factors and two-factor authentication, and that was the TLS to be able to send emails through Dynamics GP. There may be future compatibility issues depending on which systems you're integrating to with Dynamics GP. If those systems are changing, then you may need a change within GP, as well as if GP is changing, you may need a change in those systems. I already mentioned the infrastructure. We may be looking at SQL Server. If it's on a 3-year cycle, there may be a SQL Server, Windows Server 2028. Maybe you want to do that last upgrade in 2028 before the end of life to grab the most recent version of the underlying infrastructure to, again, buy you more years, assuming you're going to stay on GP, but you want to be able to trust that infrastructure and the security around that. Again, ISV price increases may be a risk. Becomes GP is going to be a premium support model, premium product, just because as a mature product, there's going to be fewer and fewer offerings out in the marketplace. And we're very conscious of maintaining the skills and growing the skills and the knowledge within Endeavour. Some of us do have some gray hair, and so we start looking 10 years out. Some individuals may be looking at retirement, and being able to access those skills is going to be an ongoing risk factor that you're going to want to maintain both for internal support as well as Endeavour. I'm confident Endeavour is going to be able to keep going and keep you in shape. We made a 10-year pledge this summer for supporting Dynamics GP. So that was before the end of life announcement. We didn't know it at the time. Really doesn't change anything. So 2024 to 2034, I'm sure we're going to support it past 2034. 10-year pledge was just a nice round number and something to make as a strategic decision and commitment from the Endeavour ownership and leadership team that we will be supporting GP for a number of years to come, and yourselves included. We have dedicated support coast to coast, Atlantic time, Eastern time, Central time, Mountain time, all the way out to Pacific time. We have clients all across, and we're actually actively growing our Dynamics GP client base. So many clients are moving to Business Central, but we're also backfilling that with additional clients being onboarded and joining Endeavour that were on GP, potentially implemented by another organization, but coming to us for the support. So our support plans, unlimited break fix support. I think this is awesome. It's a big swing and a risk factor that has been calculated internally within Endeavour to provide unlimited times to call for if something breaks within GP. We heard back and feedback from clients was there's often resistance, reluctance, a fear of calling support because they have to pay for our time. We are a for-profit business. If we can create unlimited break fix support tickets, we want you to call more often. Engage with us, help us provide advice and knowledge, keep your systems running, but also proactively add in a little bit of strategy, a little bit of extra mentorship, and a little bit of extra training. Unlimited break fix, if we look at the bullets, if it works now and it breaks, our team will fix it. There's also premium plans that we have that adds in additional advisory services for more of those custom reports, training, and extra development. So talk to our team, reach out to us online, reply to your webinar invite, you name it. It's nice and easy to ask. We want to be easy to do business with, and we can talk to you about support plans. So next thing is transitioning. Marvin and I hosted a webinar earlier this year on 5 points why it's hard to move from GP to Business Central. These are the 5 points, rather than doing them one at a time. Boom, here all the 5 ones are. And then the next slide, we sort of have a conclusion. Marvin, again, I want to push this to you. Can you just, at a high level, talk about each one of these points? We have 20 minutes left in the webinar, and I want to have some time for some Q&A. So maybe
this
5 minutes on this part, and then we'll go on to the next slide.
This is Scott politely saying, Marvin, you talk a lot, and can we keep it to just the points? So I'll do my best.
Thank you, sir.
So a couple things. So in regards to point one, just facts, we've got GP, which is based on a dexterity code base. We're looking at BC, which is based on an AL code base. They're both running on SQL Server, but at the end of the day, they are two different applications. So keep that in mind. If you were to open up and crack open the SQL Server for your GP, it's got the list of the tables, the list of the structure and everything. When you look at BC, the structure is different. There is a migration tool that will move data across from one spot to the other, but keep in mind that the structure is different. When I say the structure is different, it comes down to, do I have custom features that I've put in? A custom feature may be a custom report that calls certain tables from GP. Well, if I need that report, remember, you're going to have to get that rebuilt because it's calling from the SOP 10100 table maybe, which is a GP table, and now that's the orders table inside BC. So different structure, which means there's going to be some requirements to take a look at what you're doing, and for lack of a better term, remap and possibly rebuild on some of the things. For example, the reports. Now, I mentioned there is a tool. So the tool is going to get you, it gets you quite far, but it's not all the way over. So when we think about point one, there are two different ERPs. That means the structure of the application itself is going to be different also. For example, if we're using customers, items, or vendors, we have something in GP called an item class, a customer class, a vendor class. When we think about those, inside BC, and I'm just going to move it over onto my screen for a second, Scott, because I'm going to share out a few things here.
Go ahead.
Inside BC, they use something called posting groups. So if you use the migration tool to move over those master records, okay, so the migration tool will move those master records over. But what ends up happening is when I take a look at a vendor, it's going to get stuck with a posting group called GP rather than having it Canadian, US, or international, or domestic, or whatever. There's going to be some effort around cleaning up those posting groups. So there's still going to be some cleanup that's required because it just doesn't translate one to one. When you look at your chart of accounts, so if I go back to that chart of accounts example here, when I look at my chart of accounts here, remember how we have those cash beginning and end totals? Well, if I go take a look at a company that had the chart of accounts migrated over, we didn't actually push any of the balances, but it will push over balances and history too. But we didn't push any over in this just so we could have a sample. You're seeing here, just out of the box, once I moved it over, I don't have any of those begin and end totals. So that may be part of that cleanup task. Another thing that you can take a look at is if I'm going under here and I go vendors, okay, I'm just going to do one of my shortcuts or that I have bookmarked. I get my vendors across. These are the vendors from Fabricam, which is Microsoft's test company in GP. So they came across. However, there's something that you're going to notice really quick. Inside BC, it is a string value, for example, for the phone number. Inside GP, if I went back into GP for a second, you're going to notice here, if I go into my purchasing vendor, when I take a look at that phone number, okay, I picked a vendor without a phone number. Ah, there's one. It actually has those brackets around it and everything. Those brackets are actually format codes inside the code base of GP. So inside the table, it is just 11 or 15 characters or whatever. So when it migrates over as just what you're seeing. Now, looking at this, we've done this a number of times migrating over. We'll actually do little things to make life easy. So inside here, we can go share and just either open in Excel or edit in Excel. Something as simple as edit in Excel is going to give us the opportunity to clean this up. So if I just open up this vendor card, and I'm trying to speak quickly, Scott, I know you want me to keep to a couple minutes, but
No problem.
I get
I
very
love this
excited about
part.
some of this stuff.
And it
So you'll
does
see
show how
here,
easy it is to edit everything in Excel Online.
so Scott, I think you mentioned the single sign-on and stuff like that a minute ago. So it does tie in my Office 365 account. So you'll see there's a picture of me up here. It's actually just grabbing the information, so it's refreshing it. So from here, I've got a quick list of my vendors. Two things I can do here. I can, add some formatting here. I'm not going to build out a formula, but let's just say it was like this and this, obviously you'd probably pick a format code inside Excel just to say break it apart, and maybe I don't need these last four digits. But something as simple as that, I can make that change, and when I go publish here, what that's going to do is it's going to go right back to the database and say, okay, update this. Another thing that would have happened is that posting group would have got named wrong or would have come over as GP. I can clean them up inside Excel and push it back in. And when I go back here, I'm just going to refresh the screen. And if all goes well, there should be some brackets around that phone number. I'm just going to give it a second to refresh. And excellent. So you can see they're very easy to clean it up. So things like that, nice and easy to clean up. I can even, so I'm going to take a second here, Scott, and just go off script because I do this all the time. Other things, GP didn't have what's called a numbering sequence. A numbering sequence says I want to auto create, the next number. Inside GP, you had to give it a vendor had to give it a number, an item, a customer, whatever it is, you had to give it a number and then set up the details. If I wanted to, using this, because this is edit in Excel. I could have dumped it to Excel, but I can also edit in Excel. If I want to go and create Scott Jorgens, right? So if I go and create Scott Jorgens, so I'll just go Scott J here. I could fill in Scott's address and everything. He'll get mad if I put his address there, and I can say, he belongs to whatever. But once I get down here, all I have to do is hit publish. What will end up happening is it looks at the next number available in sequence because I have a number sequence for my vendors where I said the numbering sequence starts with the V for vendor and 10 was the next number. So it auto created 10 for Scott. And when I go back into BC again, you'll see here when I start to do my search, so GP has a left to right search on that primary key. Well, I'm going to go OTT. So Scott is contains, so you can see that it contains. So any field that's visible here, and I can add more fields by personalizing, but any field is going to do a contain search to find that. So in this case, international telephone, Scott Dwyer was also a contact there, and Scott J is a vendor. So pretty easy to actually get an update. So do some of that cleanup. But at the end of the day, remember, these are two different applications. So when it does move over, customers, vendors, those master records are going to come over. Even when I take a look across on this, if I just clear this filter here and I just pull open my fact pane, you're going to see on my fact pane here as I scroll up or as I scroll down, there's payables invoices. So GP invoices and transactions, they do get moved over. So I do get the history that comes across. So it is going to be brought across. I'm going to get it in the fact pane. I can drill back down on it. I can see the ledger entries here. So these are the, this happen to be some beginning balances, pull up more information, and I can always drill back on those as well. So it does give me the ability to bring across that history. But remember, they're two different applications. There's going to be some cleanup.
Thanks,
I think
Marvin.
we had a few more points there. So on-prem versus cloud. Did you want to touch that one or?
We talked on the security. I think it's really just the setting up the user roles, cleaning up your data beforehand.
The other thing, on-prem versus cloud, let's think about somebody new got hired. All right, so we just brought Scott on to the company and we need to give him access to BC. If this was GP, well, Scott's got a new laptop, got to get IT involved. They go install GP, run through the tools, get the connectivity, stuff like that. Inside BC, you just have to assign a license to Scott, set Scott's permissions, okay? So there's permission sets that say Scott's allowed to look at the vendors, create new vendors, but can't touch the GL, stuff like that. All you have to do at that point is it's web-based or cloud-based, grab the web address, send it over to Scott. He now has access. So if Scott needs to get up and running, give him a user, send him the address, he's in. No additional setup required on that desktop or whatever means that he's logging in through. So that's one of the big things on the application that personal to me, I know there's whole security and everything, Scott, but personal to me, I like how quick it is. I
Can
mentioned
you show Business Central again? Just to highlight, because we didn't talk about Hi, welcome to Business Central, because we're talking about GP today, but just the fact that you can have basically an unlimited number of tabs open in your browser.
yeah.
Every tab is a URL unique to the page that you're looking at. So you can share pages, you can share information through Teams. We got multi-entity, multi-whatever. Plus, Marvin, could you talk a little bit about some of the embedded training and help guides?
Oh,
Because
fantastic.
it reminded me when you talked about adding new clients and adding new hires. I just joined the team. Hey, here's the URL to Business Central. Go at it and don't delete all our data. Okay,
Yeah.
how about a little bit of help guide on how to use a new ERP?
Oh, that's actually a great question. So when you take a look here, so I've pulled up the customer. Some people like a little more real estate. Some people like the fact pane showing up. So as I highlight here, you'll see if I move over to Sportmeyer here, it's going to dynamically change the information. But as I get into different fields, so if I drill back on Spotmeyer here, as I go into the different functional areas, so you've got the help, of course, you've got the help up in the top right corner here that you can go into the help. But as you navigate through it, you'll notice here there's hyperlinks that go right into it. I can say, oh, well, what is this? Well, it shows the information about it. I can also go show help. It's going to pull up the help screen on the left-hand side. So it's brought it into this. And even in the help and support, I have the ability to drill right back into this. And on the help, you can say, oh, okay, well, here's the help and support, help about different windows. You can even tie in more information where it will actually go into training videos. So it's going to link back to that Microsoft page, and there's going to be videos that show you, well, this is how you create a new customer, or this is what the customer card is and stuff like that. And one of the releases that's coming out, Scott, is actually Copilot in BC. So there's a number of areas Copilot's been already embedded in BC, but another one of the areas that it's going to be embedded in is in that help. So as I log into BC, you're going to see Copilot show up in the top right corner here. And this is where you can start, hey, tell me how to create a new account. And it's going to go out to the internet, grab information that's particular about BC and say, well, inside BC, you're going to be doing this. Would you like to see a video on it? And gives you links to that. So it's pretty cool. We've seen that in preview. It looks really great on that standpoint too.
Yeah, yeah, and I know for some clients, or almost all our clients, we're also recording the training sessions, and you can influence that help menu with your own internal knowledge base. And so you're embedding stuff as well there. So you got, public help, private help, individual help. Marvin, onto this slide, because I'm just looking at time. Why don't you recap it into a summary, and then I need like another minute at the end just to sort of close it up. And there are some questions in the chat that we want to get to at the end of this presentation.
Yeah.
So in conclusion, why is it hard to move from GP to Business Central?
Well, hard may be too strong of a word. What we want to make people understand is it is not I always joke in the Staples button, the easy button, you slap the easy button and all of a sudden it's moved over. Well, keep in mind, these are two different application bases, so there's going to be some cleanup. Even if you use the GP to BC migration tool, it gets you quite a bit of the ways there, but you're still going to have cleanup. The other thing, Scott, hopefully everybody noticed, when I pulled up GP, everyone probably had a look and feel that they go, oh, yes, I remember this, or I've used this every day. This looks familiar because it's looked that way for the last 10 or 15 years. BC has a different look and feel. Do not discount that training factor, because when you go live, you want to make sure that the people that do the day-to-day work know how to work in the application. So training is always a big part of it. So there's that migration. So I need to move the data over, but don't forget about the training, because those are the people you have to sit next to each day, and you want to make sure they know what they're doing. So that's a big factor that you want to make, that you always want to take into consideration. So when we talk about the migration, is it hard? No, but it's not an easy button that, Staples makes you believe. It's just boom. And there's others that make you believe we can just migrate your data over. Well, as soon as you get in, there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff that you need to clean up. So just keep that in mind. And I always want to make sure people think about the human factor. You got people at the end of the day that are working in this application. Give them the tools, and the tools are the knowledge. So make sure they are up to speed on what they need to know.
Yep, and that's really our role as Endeavour, as your GP support partner, is keeping you happy for years to come on GP. And if you move to Business Central, keeping you happy for years to come on Business Central. And it's that long-term play where we want to force you to do it right the first time, get trained properly, get adoption and a great return on investment on your investments on your system, and be able to move with you. Just looking at the time, I'm going to say thank you. Again, we have these two white papers, digital transformation, 10 proof points for moving to Business Central, and then as well as transformation on Business Central. We're here to help you. These were great things written by our team, and Marvin had input on it as well, and they really do help move things along. Here's our website for GP Support North. We have a little link over on the right that says end of life. That has some of the facts and details around end of life if you are looking for it. The top, you can see a picture of the white paper. You just click on it. You can download it. We're not hiding it. You don't have to tell us. Just download it, share it, and ingest some of those details around transformation while staying on GP. And obviously, if you do want to move to Business Central, there's links within our website, both there as well as on GP on EndeavourSolutions.com. Back to Endeavour. We're now finishing up our 35th year in business, moving on to year 36, advisory, implementations, and that optimization and support. We're really looking at the long-term benefit, helping all of our clients look like heroes and helping you get the most out of your business applications. Our consultants are up to about 100 now, with plans for growth beyond that, probably into 120 very soon, all working with integrity, trust, and accountability. And that's why we want to keep you as happy customers and help you be easy to do business with. And I think our GP support plans are going to be that, and how we work with you if you want to move to Business Central is going to be like a great way to go. So we're going to start on the Q&A. We
I
typically
was
don't
going to
record
say,
the
Scott,
Q&A, so we'll
there,
say,
there's a couple questions here that I think we still have a few minutes that people
yeah,
have put in the Q&A. So Les, glad you could join. Always nice seeing you and chatting with you. Um, let's ask the question if we've built, so Endeavour's built any custom integrations from third-party software into GP, and how will they be handled in BC? So excellent question. So a number of people have these front-end applications. I'll call it front-end applications. So maybe it's a front-end sales application or front-end whatever it is. Maybe trucking industry or something like that. They're using Trimble or Bluebird or McLeod or something, and it's tracking the information, and it needs to create transactions in the back office. So let's call BC the back office. In GP, you would often see people use something like Smart Connect. So E1 Smart Connect or Integration Manager if you're looking at more of a legacy product. From the standpoint of BC, Smart Connect still works with BC, but one of the things that we found is it's actually easier to use the open APIs. So BC, because it's cloud-based, has a number of APIs that are available. And if the API doesn't meet the full requirements, we have the skills to also build APIs that would pass the data through. We were working with a not-for-profit, well, we still are actually, and they were using something called Razor's Edge, and it was pulling all the donations in, and it was actually pulling them in as journal entries. Part of the design is we use that API function to grab the data from Blackbaud or Razor's Edge. We actually moved it into a staging table so that they could review it first, because maybe some of the stuff in Blackbaud didn't align perfectly with BC, and it gave them an exception report where they could just simply hit, show exceptions because it didn't meet the logic, like maybe it was a dimensional value or something like that was missing, because Blackbaud had basically open where people could type whatever they wanted. So to answer your question, Les, yes, we have. We typically use the APIs that are either out of the box with BC, or we'll build an API if it needs to be built because there's a little bit more tailored layer that has to be put into it.
great. Next question that actually Les asked this one too, but I'll answer it. What versions of Dynamics GP does Endeavour support?
I
All
was on a
versions.
call earlier this week, Scott, with somebody
After
on
version 9,
GP10.
GP10, yeah.
Yes.
So we're actively supporting clients that are off of a supported version from Microsoft. Microsoft basically is not supporting giving any updates for 2016 and earlier. And we have lots of 2013, yeah, the GP10 client, and I think we might have one on GP9 as well.
Yes. Now, will we support GPA DOS? I don't think we have anybody on that. I don't think we would. I actually did an install years ago, Scott, for GP for Mac. I don't think we would support that either. That was GP2, I think it was. But we do support people way back. In fact, I think 9 or 10 is the oldest version that a client has that we work with, and we're still supporting it. Now, there's some limitations because they're on a older version of SQL and then Hyper-V and stuff like that. But yeah.
And that's also the definition of the break fix. If it works now and it breaks, we'll fix it. If it was broken 10 years ago, we're not fixing it because it may
Yeah.
not be able to be fixed, or time and materials for all the analysis and customizations that may need for that. Did you want to read the next question yourself or choose which one you want,
Yeah.
Mervyn?
So Mohammed asked a question about deciding on whether to invest in new hardware or moving over to a cloud-based infrastructure. Mohammed, I'm going to recommend, Scott, can you reach out after the call with them? We have some tools available that help to do that cost-benefit analysis and take a look at it to say, here's what the, plug in the cost for the new hardware. Here's what the cost of the SaaS model is. So it'll give you an apple-to-apple comparison, just so you have a full understanding of what, the cost and the I guess the cost going into it and the long-term cost.
Cost, risk, benefit. For all those listening, there are on the GP support North website, there is a section called GP Private Cloud Hosting, and we have a webinar from the past, as well as some analysis that helps to educate you on the different options of Azure versus private cloud versus hosting elsewhere. But Mohammed, I will reach out to you directly, and we can host that conversation.
Now, Sturge asked in regards to any tricks or advice on facilitating the transfer of a GL account from GP to Business Central. Um, so you can, and I'll go back here for a second, you can leverage the migration tool. And what it's going to do is, let me just go back into my migrated Business Central here. So you'll see here under the finance chart of accounts, what ends up happening is you are going to get basically the list of the GL accounts that come over with their attributes and with everything set up there. What you aren't going to get is the space left to give if you want to use those totaling accounts. What I've seen a lot of people do, not that it's difficult in either system, but what I've seen a lot of people do because they're more comfortable in GP because they've been working in GP for the last 10 years is use something like the professional service tools, dump out the chart of accounts using SmartList, clean it up, pull it in, and then when they migrate over to BC, they've left space and then they just create the totaling account. So if I wanted to, I could just create a new account here, and maybe my new account is assets, and then 1,000 assets, and this is going to be a balance sheet type, and this is going to be a begin total or a header. So in this case, I just call it begin total, and the category is assets and stuff like that. So either way would work. What I've experienced, though, from what I know, people seem to be, I haven't got into BC yet, so I'm not as comfortable there yet. It's very quick learning curve, so they do get the comfort. But if you are more comfortable in GP because you're working in it right now, maybe use the professional service tools to clean it up, knowing that if you're going over to BC, it's something that'll be there. The accounts will be ready for you, but you don't want to create this account 1000 in GP because it doesn't have the concept of a totaling account. So you'll want to leave that space so you can add them into BC. Now, the second thing that you can do is if it has that space, you can always go back here and go edit in Excel and then add the accounts through the edit in Excel function if you wanted to add those begin total and end totals. So just a couple different concepts to think about.
Thanks, Marvin. Tom asked about Canadian payroll. There is no Canadian payroll in Business Central, but there are payroll add-ons that will add in Canadian payroll to Business Central.
Yeah, so Canadian payroll was a product that was created by a company called IntelliSol back in 2000 or 2005 or something like that. Microsoft at some point after that, they bought the product and they incorporated it in. So from the IntelliSol product, it became Canadian payroll, which just became part of the base product inside GP. BC does not have, it has resources, but it does not have a payroll module out of the box. This is where an extension would come in, so a third party. So any of you that are in like the job cost sector, you may have heard of Wensoft and stuff like that. NaviPay, which is made by a company called Serenic, they're the ones that are creating a Canadian payroll. We have, I think, 4 or 5 people on staff that implement Canadian payroll. I work closely with a guy named Jeff all the time. He's been certified in NaviPay for about 10 years or 15 years now. So is there Canadian payroll? Out of the box, like core with BC, no, but there is an extension that does payroll.
Management Reporter, why don't you talk about reporting, Marvin?
Okay, so Management Reporter. Management Reporter, financial reporting tool. A lot of you people are probably using it. The architecture behind Management Reporter is that it relies on Active Directory. So if we start thinking about on-prem, Active Directory exists. However, when we start to move to cloud, we have a Dynamics 365 login. So it's good. Marvin's going to be his D365 login. So it means I don't have Active Directory. So Management Reporter does not exist inside Business Central. However, there is a financial reporting tool that is very similar to Management Reporter. I love Management Reporter, so anyone that's ever worked with me on that basis, they know I'll talk about it for days. But under the finance here, you're going to see something called financial reporting. It is similar to Management Reporter. It's not exactly the same. Some of the concepts or some of the logic behind it is a little bit different. But you're going to see here you have the ability to create a variety of different reports. These are all going to be financial reports. The M reports are the out-of-the-box reports that Microsoft deploys, and it works with the different components inside that chart of accounts, so the categories and subcategories. It'll auto-update them. Or you can create your own tailored reports. So if I go in, for example, my column definition here,
Marvin, you're not sharing your screen.
Oh, well, it would have looked really awesome if you guys saw it. Just kidding. So when I look here, basically I went back to my home page. So from my home page here, let me just go into Marvin's test company here from finance. I went into financial reports. You're going to see a listing of those different reports. You can call it what you want. You can save as. I'm just going to grab this M report. So from here, I can pick up the different layouts. So if I wanted to have one for named months, that is basically, if you think about the building blocks inside Management Reporter, or the dimensions as they're called Management Reporter, you have a row dimension and a column dimension. So from those two bases, that's what you have here. So I just have a column definition, or a dimension as Management Reporter would call it, that just outlines what the periods are, and it gives the names on the top, and that's pulling from the calendar. As well, I could have like actual versus budget. I could have a department one. So this is going to be actually the departments, breaking out the different departments. You can see I don't really have any postings on the departments or the councils or whatever it was that I was looking at. So I could have a central, eastern, western council. So you can just define them as you want. So Management Reporter doesn't exist inside Business Central, but something called Financial Reports does. There's also a whole host of other tools. Like one of the ones that we see people commonly move to is a tool called Jet Reports. Jet's been around forever. It actually works in GP as well, but because it's very parallel to Management Reporter, people always often just went with Management Reporter, but Jet Reports would be a great substitution. I like Jet Reports because it also takes into account not just the GL, but it can be built on the subledger as well. So you have reports that are both GL and subledger, and a very easy tool to work with. And does it have a concept of a tree in management as Management Reporter does now? No, it does not have the concept of a tree, but one of the big reasons is if you start thinking about the dimensional structure of BC, the dimensions are where you can handle the tree concept. Something like Jet Reports would more closely align to, if you think about having separate tabs for each one of the trees, Jet Reports would have that functionality, whereas Financial Reports, it does not have that tree concept. Oh,
Hey, Marvin, also just in terms of trees, some of the ISVs for reporting. So Vivid Reports does trees.
absolutely.
FYI Soft does trees. So if you like your trees, you
There are a
can
whole
do
host of
that.
tools.
We just had a webinar with Vivid Reports last month, and they have a migration tool that takes all your MR reports, and 99% of it just gets moved over into their tool, including the trees. And again, for Vivid Reports, it works for GP and works for Business Central. So you can use that now, do reporting for 2 or 3 years, move to Business Central. Use that now, do reporting for 2 or 3 months, move to Business Central in the summer. You're empowering your team with one less thing to learn during go live because they can start learning the new reporting tool now, making some of those business impacts with better decisions, better dashboards.
So there's another great question from Irfan. So his question is regarding project accounting. So inside GP, there was a module called project accounting. Inside BC, there is a module. It used to be called jobs. It is now called projects. These would be closely paralleled if you're thinking about one to the other. Now, when we talk about the migration tool, so the migration tool, as Scott had put on one of his slides, it moves a lot of the data over. What it doesn't do is it doesn't move project accounting data over to projects. There are the ability to either use the edit in Excel to pull it in, and there's something called config packs that you would be able to pull the data out of GP through maybe a SQL call to SQL, or you could use one of the smart lists to pull it out and then pull the data in. From the standpoint of projects, the structure is, think of it more like a blend between jobs and project accounting. So if I were to pull up projects here quickly, I'll just pull up one of the projects just to use as an example. ERP implementation might be relevant here, might not, but you can see here from the projects, you can define the tasks, and then underneath the tasks, you have the ability to take a look at the planning lines. So requirements may have multiple planning lines. You can define a planning line as a budget, a billable, or a budget and billable. You can set what the budget is. You can either use a resource. So think of a resource as anything. So a resource could be a person, it could be a machine, it could be I need to buy a permit to do something, or whatever it is. You can also use items, and you can use GL accounts, so you can charge items to it. So from this basis, you would, as you're getting payables in, you would charge it and associate it to the project. It would build up the actual. You can run reports against this. This is going to tell you when there's remaining and stuff like that. And then if there's billable, so if this task line happened to be billable, you can say what the bill rate is and how many invoices have been put out against it, and then the amount remaining. There's a WIP function, so you can either do a WIP function against a project, or you can do it on a mass basis. You can say, I want to run WIP against all my projects. You can also do billings. So the billings, you can either pick a project and generate your billings for, or once again, you can generate the billings for all the projects that have billings needed to be generated. I'm not doing it justice by talking about it for a minute or two, but I just want to let Irfan know there is a projects module in BC. It's not quite the same as the projects module in GP, so there is no migration across to it, but we have seen we've seen very good success for clients that are using projects. It's not one of those modules that a lot of people use in the GP world, I'll be honest with you, but the ones that are, it does fit in nicely with the projects module in BC. And I think we've moved 3 or 4 clients over. One of them, it didn't quite work because they needed a little bit more detail, and we ended up going with a product called the OMSI. So there is, extensions that enhance and build upon that. So kind of like if you were using projects for jobs inside GP, you often would have just gone to Wensoft to use their job cost module. Well, OMSI would be like that, but for project basis. So if you need it like at a much more advanced level, OMSI would be something. There's a couple other ones, but we find most fall into the projects module. Some of them may have to go to a little bit more of an advanced tool.
Great. I think it's probably time to wrap it up. For those still on the line, thank you very much for attending today. And you can always ask, email, reply to the webinar invites, reply to our monthly newsletters. Obviously, read our monthly newsletters. We have a monthly newsletter for Dynamics GP that goes out on the 15th of every month. We have a newsletter that goes out for Business Central the middle of each month. We have a newsletter for CRM that goes out at the end of each month. If you're not receiving 1, 2, or 3 of those, email support at Endeavour Solutions, or find someone in your organization's getting a copy and ask for those copies. If you unsubscribe, obviously you don't get them. Also, go to our website. On the website, in the footer, as well as the contact us, there's contact forms as well as an email Steve Ewing. Send Steve an email. He will fire it off same day to someone else in the organization or answer the question himself. Same thing for support. If you have any questions, email support and say, hey, support, I don't want to be charged with this question, but I have a question. Can you point me in the right direction to one of your business advisors or one of my account managers, or let me talk to Scott? There's a lot of great things. We want to be easy to do business with. Talking to Marvin, that gets a little bit trickier. He is a top billable resource of ours, and as well as managing the larger team, but we can also set up those discussions as well. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day. I appreciate you attending. Happy Thanksgiving to our Americans and those that are watching the recording. Look forward to working with you now and into the future. Bye for now.